Okay, I just wanted to point out a few things about 3D printing and the objects you print. So I have a little robot here that somebody designed. He's kind of a cute little fella. But you can see that his arm would be hanging out in space. And if you were to print that in 3D and just have the plastic squirt out here, it would fall to the ground. So there's a button we can push on the program that builds what's called supports. And you can see there's kind of like these little pillars here that hold that up. And it did the same thing here underneath where his initials were, and underneath the legs and stuff like that. And that makes a whole bunch of extra plastic you need to trim off. Now there's always going to be this thing around the edge here. I'm going to move this guy in so you can see it. This very thin piece around here, it's called a raft, and that's what keeps your name tag or robot or whatever it is that you're making stuck to the plate as the 3D printer is printing it. So here's an example, let's see if I can focus, of how that is curling up. Right here you can see this is sort of lifting up a little bit because the raft got kind of peeled away. Hopefully this name tag is still going to come out okay, but it does make it a little more difficult. So once again, what I'm most concerned about is that if you're designing something, and maybe in that activity 5 or 6 where you're copying something from the gallery and adding to it, try not to make things that have parts floating in the air like this little robot arm here, because if you do that, it's going to create all sorts of extra structures around the thing. We can snip it off, and it's going to take me probably 10 or 15 minutes to use this tool to snip off all the little pieces of plastic there. In that process, I might break the parts you actually wanted to keep, which would be a drag. But if at all possible, try to make a piece where there are no pieces just hanging and floating in air. And if you do, check with your teacher before you have them print it, so we can figure out how to set the structure up to make sure that it doesn't just turn into what looks like a pile of plastic spaghetti on the table. Okay, so I've taken a good long time to go ahead and peel all the plastic. You can see some of these leftover pieces here from the what I had to break off from this robot, the structure that was holding the arms up. In fact, you can even see here one of his little hands got chipped off, and one of his eyeballs is a little messed up as well. So what I was just talking about in terms of having as few overhangs as possible will avoid things like the little robot losing his hands and having little deformities. You can still see there's a lot of flashing and little bits of plastic hanging out around there. This was also something I had to use little saws and X-Acto knives and razor blades, all sorts of things like that, things I'm certainly not going to let a student do for safety reasons. And so for a project like this to come out requires a lot of extra effort and work and time from your teacher, so that's why we're going to try to discourage you from that. Not saying you can't do it, but check with your teacher first before you try to print something that has all those hanging in space things like the little robot arms there.